Welcome back to the MyRadar Podcast. My name is Meteorologist Mike Linden, and if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel and don't forget to click on that notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video. And if you did not know, these podcasts are available in audio form as well. You can find MyRadar on SoundCloud as well. So my guest today comes to us from the Great White North. My guest today is global Calgary meteorologist Tiffany Lizée. Bonjour, Tiffany.
Oh, bonjour. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
I'm so glad that you didn't bring more French to the table there, because as far as my knowledge of French goes, I think it's just bonjour and merci. That's it. That's all I got.
You know what? Those are the two most important words, so you're good.
There you go. So for our viewers watching, explain to I guess our United States viewers, explain to me what Global is. I mean, it is a television network across all of Canada, correct?
Correct. It's one of the biggest television networks stretching across our country, and I'm located in Alberta, so I'm in the prairies just north of Montana, but we have TV stations with Global News in Vancouver, in Saskatchewan, in Manitoba, and in almost every single province, so we stretch nationwide.
Now, I've got to imagine that you studying, at least in school in Canada, obviously everything is in Celsius, correct?
Yes, it is.
So when we both met through Mississippi State University, kind of the go-to for meteorologists or broadcast meteorologists in the United States. Was that difficult for you to have to kind of go through all of the schoolwork in Fahrenheit?
It was really tricky. The good thing is that Celsius is more of a universal temperature language, so a lot of the stuff was in Celsius. I shouldn't say a lot of it. I would say it was 50-50. You'd think by now that I'd be really quick to be able to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit by now. I'm not. I'm one of those. I pick up my phone. I just did it. I was thinking, we're 4 degrees Celsius today. What is that in Fahrenheit? Oh, 39. Thanks, Google.
Ooh, 39 degrees. Oh my gosh. I mean, I've lived, I guess, in the northern half of the United States for almost my entire life, but now living in Florida, it is a total game changer down here. What has it been like for you? What is a Canadian winter like?
I want you to come and visit and tell me for yourself. It is typically brutally cold. Across the prairies, and I'm just going to look this up in Fahrenheit so I make sure that I get this right, but we usually see temperatures go as low as minus 22 Fahrenheit, and that's without wind chill, so that is the ambient air temperature. It can get even colder than that. I've experienced colder than minus 50 Celsius. That would be minus 58 Fahrenheit with wind chill. Yeah, so we are strong and thick-skinned thanks to that cold weather. But so it's cold, and it's also quite snowy. We usually see 2-3 feet of snowfall throughout the winter, and that stays as well. And I'm close to the mountains now in Calgary, Alberta, and so we get a lot of that heavy, wet snow. In fact, over the weekend, we just had a big spring snowfall that shut down our highways and pretty much closed our city on a Saturday.
Oh my gosh. Now Calgary, the home of the Flames, correct? The NHL team?
Oh, I missed you. Can you say that one more time?
No,
sorry, my Wi-Fi froze.
No, that's totally fine. Calgary, the home of the Flames, correct?
Home of the Calgary Flames.
Again, that's about as far as my knowledge goes. So for explain to our viewers, what is it like to forecast in Calgary? Because you're pretty close to British Columbia then, right? You're centrally kind of western located?
Yeah, and the Rocky Mountains are right in between us. And so having the Rocky Mountains so close to Calgary really impacts our weather here. We get Chinooks, which are really warm winds that come off the mountains. So in our winter months, often we'll have snowy, cold afternoons, and then we'll get a Chinook that can boost our temperatures significantly. We've seen temperature swings of 20 plus degrees, and they can melt all of the snow around as well. So that can cause some flooding we've seen in the past. It can cause headaches. health impacts from this huge temperature swing. The mountains influence our winters and our temperatures year-round quite a bit, which makes it really interesting. That's why I'm really happy I'm here, because it makes for a bit of a challenge forecasting.
I would have to imagine. I mean, the closest thing that I guess I've experienced was when I was working in Washington State, and the Cascade Mountains just is a total game changer when it comes to forecasting the weather. I would have to imagine that another game changer would be having to know a second language. Do you have to broadcast in English and French too where you are?
No, I don't. So global news across the country is only English. There is one Canadian network that does do English and French, the CBC. But otherwise, for me, I only have to broadcast in English. Thank goodness, because it's hard enough, you know, sometimes with the terms that we have to use, just to have them in one language. In two languages, that would be tricky.
I mean, having to think on your feet, as meteorologists do, without the help of a script, to have to think on the fly in two different languages in your head, that's amazing.
And kudos to the people who do it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Absolute kudos to them. So again, in Canada, there's only a couple of provinces versus here in the United States. You know, you have multiple states and counties within those states. Is it a challenge for you having to forecast for such a massive geographic area?
Absolutely. So while I'm in Calgary right now, we really just focus on the Calgary region and then kind of the southern portion of the province, because our province is so big. When I was in Saskatchewan, our population in that province was so spread out. So you do have to forecast for more of the province. But I enjoyed that, because the southern portion of Saskatchewan, which is just north of North Dakota, you had some of the most active weather in the entire country. So that always gave me that challenge of forecasting tornadoes, forecasting strong downbursts and hail, etc. So it definitely made for a great challenge. And Saskatchewan, one province over from where I am right now, has one of the most diverse climates in the entire world, in the sense that you can get tornadoes and temperatures 40 degrees Celsius and hotter, or you can get minus 40, which I believe lines right up with Fahrenheit, and blizzards, and you can get such an array and such a variety of weather. It always kept you on your toes. And then over here in southern Alberta, we get one of the worst hailstorms, so they have to do cloud seeding to soften the hail, because insurance claims have just gone up so much.
Wow.
So the prairie weather here is amazing, and it's really what fueled my drive to get into meteorology in the first place.
You're awesome. Segue right into that question. I feel like with every person involved in the weather business, so to say, there's kind of that one light bulb moment that makes everyone kind of appreciate, I guess, the weather, or be incredibly fearful of it. But either way, kind of drives you right toward that understanding, or the desire to understand more. What was your light bulb moment?
Growing up on a farm just north of the international border, so just north of North Dakota is where I grew up. And that's kind of our, almost our tornado alley here in Canada. So we got a lot of different kinds of weather. And because I grew up in agriculture, it was ingrained in me in how important weather is to your daily activities. If you're going to work that day, what exactly you're going to do, what crops you're going to plant, right? And climate change played into that as well. And so it was almost ingrained into me, so much so that when my mom, when I was getting through the tail end of high school, she said, what do you want to do? What do you want to study? And I said, weather. It just feels so natural. I'm so intrigued with weather. I had been caught in some severe thunderstorms, some tornadic thunderstorms as a kid, and it always sparked an interest for me. But also I understood the importance of it. And what pushed me into the broadcasting side of meteorology was back in the day, I would say broadcast meteorology sometimes wasn't taken as seriously as it is now. It was almost like you wanted the most personality in your weather broadcasters. You wanted the fun, kind of more lighthearted broadcaster. And that was great. It was entertaining. But for people where the weather mattered for your daily job. It was really important to me as a kid. I kind of looked at that and I said, I want to go and I want to do better. And I want to be serious about this. I want to get my meteorology, and I want to show people that I take it seriously. And so that's why I kind of jumped into the broadcasting side of meteorology. If that answers your question, I kind of rambled in circles, as one does.
Of course it answers the question. I mean, it absolutely, I mean, you're correct. When it comes to, there's that line, right? When it comes to information that could potentially be life-saving information, when that person comes up on camera that maybe is like the jokester, you know, has that kind of personality, it may turn the viewers off to think, well, this person doesn't necessarily have the credibility to give me that important information. So I absolutely, totally agree with you.
Yeah, and even something as little as rain. So if someone were to say, oh, we might get 10, 20 millimeters, we'll see what happens. No, we need to know, because this is a matter of, are our fields going to flood out? What about our storm drains here? You know, there's a lot that can be impacted. So you shouldn't be flippant about the forecast. And I think you can still have fun. You can still have personality, totally, as long as you take it seriously and you're putting together your forecast to the best of your ability. I think you can definitely balance both.
Absolutely. When it comes to with how this year has been here in the United States, an intense year for weather, to say the least. I mean, incredibly cold winter temperatures in the Midwest. It seems as though there have been more frequent tornado outbreaks, I mean, and rare ones happening in the fall. I know in Canada, specifically in British Columbia, this previous summer was an incredibly devastating wildfire season, much like how it was in the United States in California. Can you speak to that? I mean, what the summer was like for the Great White North?
Very dry, and right now I think is a perfect example. If you look out east in eastern Canada, if you look towards Ontario right now, Quebec, they're dealing with significant flooding. Whereas when you look out west towards British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, we're dealing with a drought. So we have two completely different conditions from one country to the next. We have significant flooding on one end, and we have drought-like conditions on the other. Whereas even across the prairies, there are some areas that have been running a moisture deficit for years, not just months, but years. And where agriculture is the hub across the prairies, that's damaging. And above that, we're seeing more and more wildfires, more and more forest fires in BC. Alberta in recent years has had some devastating wildfires that have been attributed to climate change on a scale. And it's just, it's tough to see that moisture deficit is continuing. We just had a huge spring snowfall over the weekend. Everyone said, oh, that should be enough moisture. I tallied up numbers this morning, and it's not. We're finishing off April dry again, and that's just in southern Alberta.
Wow. So then how has Canada, I guess, changed since when you were growing up to where you are now forecasting the weather for a living? Have you seen the weather kind of change to a degree over time?
I have, in a sense, where I've heard lots of stories from my grandparents about, I remember them talking about the blizzard of 47. It buried trains on train tracks. It was a huge blizzard, and they have a lot of stories like that. Whereas I maybe have one or two stories of significant blizzards in my past growing up. Nothing that buried trains by any means. So I've seen a difference in that. I've seen our winters not having as much snow as we've had in the past, but also more active weather. Last year in southern Saskatchewan, in all of Saskatchewan, there were 22 tornadoes that had touched down, whereas normally the province has about 17 to 18 tornadoes. So a big jump, and then Alberta only had 2, just one province over. So pretty big difference just in tornado activity from one province to the next. So yeah, I have seen, just in my 28 years and most recent years, really focusing in on the climate and the weather, I have seen changes. And Alberta, now that I'm living here, we have examples of climate change right in front of us. We have significant flooding right here in the city. Our downtown was underneath water back in 2013. and shut down the city for weeks because there was so much water that had accumulated downtown. And then our province has battled devastating wildfires in recent years as well. And we just had a climate change report come out from the government here in Canada that attributed both of those right back to climate change and said that we need to prepare for that to keep happening. So it's very interesting, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well. When we do talk climate change and global warming, it's hard to get people to understand what we're talking about. Here in Alberta, I don't even want to say lucky, but in a sense, I'm lucky that I can say this event, this event, this event attributed to climate change. And that helps people understand, I think, when you can relate and say, oh, I understand what you're talking about, then they can wrap their minds around climate change, if that makes sense.
Totally. I feel like you're starting to see that more here in the States as well, where when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, when people are watching the weather or watching the news on a daily basis, what, scientist are they talking to on a daily basis? And most people will say the closest thing that they have to dealing with a scientist is the meteorologist that they see on their television. So it's important for meteorologists to talk about both sides of things. It's
100%.
I feel like you're starting to see that a little more, where you're starting to see some meteorologists talk a bit more about climate change. But that's very interesting that in Canada that they are attributing these events directly to it. And that's interesting that the people there are following along with that as well, because it can most definitely be a very divisive issue whenever it's brought up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a tough thing to talk about because a lot of people have different opinions, which they're totally welcome to that. But it's hard to deny when you have a recent report with, like we said, events that you can directly attribute on some scale to climate change, and the northern part of Canada warming up at an alarming rate. Actually, my brother just went to work up in northern Canada, up in the Arctic, and I'm really looking forward to picking his brain on the changes that he's been seeing, because he's a pilot, and so he's studied meteorology to a certain extent. So he'll have that inside kind of information, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he is seeing up there, because there are not a lot of people that live that far north, and so there aren't a lot of people to kind of attest to the changes.
For sure. Now let me ask you this. The people in Canada, at least that you broadcast to and that you interact with on social media, are they super into the weather, with it affecting their livelihood on a daily basis? I'd have to guess so, but I feel like there are pockets around the United States where people are just so enthusiastic about the weather, whether it's, a warm, beautiful, sunny day, or if it's the landfalling hurricane or the severe thunderstorms, that there's pockets of people out there that just can't get enough of the weather. Is it the same way up where you are?
Oh, 100%, especially here in the prairies, because we have some of the more active weather in southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan, and southern Manitoba. We have so many weather enthusiasts, and it makes my job so much easier because we get great photos. We have storm chasers that are always out on the road, keeping me up to date, and they know how to measure the hail, how to measure just how hard the rainfall is, and they relay this information back to the meteorologists on TV. It's a great network here that I've experienced in the prairies of storm chasers and just weather enthusiasts. So because agriculture is such a prominent source here in the prairies, people pay attention. My grandpa has books and books of weather information that he's just jotted down every day. We have a lot of farmers that record the weather themselves, and sometimes will correct me when I'll say, oh, back in 1952, there was this storm, we got this much snow, and I'll get a phone call and say, actually, I recorded that day, and this is what I recorded. That's fantastic. Yeah. I absolutely love that. It keeps me on my toes. It makes sure my information is correct, which you should always be doing. But also it gives you another source besides that National Weather Service that we have here in Canada, Environment Canada. It gives us a second source of people who actually experienced it. I mentioned the blizzard of 47. We were able to go out and find people who lived through that blizzard and were able to tell their stories, which I thought was so cool. So a lot of weather enthusiasts here, a lot of people that just want to talk weather with you, if it's in the grocery store or if it's on Twitter. And to me, I love that. I love being able to chat weather, as you can probably tell.
Absolutely, definitely. Now, as they say about Canadians, some of the nicest people in the world, and you absolutely embody that completely.
Well,
Tiffany,
you.
Thank you so much for doing this. I just want to let you know that ever since I heard you call a hooded sweatshirt a bunny hug, and my wife, she only refers to them as the word bunny hug now.
It's spreading.
Can you explain what exactly we're talking about here?
We are talking about a sweater that has a hood and that feels like a bunny is hugging you because it's so soft. That is a Saskatchewan term that I carry with me everywhere. Even in Alberta, they don't say it. So every time I say, I'm going to go grab my bunny hug, they're like, you're going to do what? Some weird terms that we have, I don't know where it even comes from, to be honest. But it feels like a bunny's hugging you. Next time you put on a hooded sweater without a zipper, that it can't have a zipper,
again,
you'll know.
That is the only way that my wife refers to those kind of sweaters, a bunny hug.
That's fantastic.
So you've made an impact here in the United States for sure.
Perfect.
Tiffany, is there anything else that you'd like to mention that we might not necessarily have touched on, whether it's bunny hugs or Canada in general?
You know what? We talked about weather enthusiasts, even people with any kind of questions about the weather. I love when people ask us questions, and I'm sure you do too. It starts up a conversation. It helps us practice what we learned in school. And I just encourage people, whenever you want to know something new, like for example, we had grapple here in Alberta the other day. I loved when people were messaging me, emailing me, asking, can you explain what this is? And I just want to encourage people to do that. Reach out to Mike, reach out to myself, reach out to whoever is the meteorologist in your area and ask those questions because we love to answer them.
Look, again, the nicest people on the face of the earth, Canadians. Tiffany's information, her Twitter handle is right below. You can see it right underneath me and her, at Tiffany Global. You're everywhere now, right? I mean, Facebook, Instagram, as we kind of have to be. Meteorologists need to be in more than one place, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important because that gives an outlet for people and for viewers or weather enthusiasts to reach out to us and just to learn that we're human. We're just like everybody else. We are weather nerds in our own way. So
not an insult.
It does
that is
open up.
not an insult in the slightest
No,
bit.
no.
I take it as a compliment.
Me too. I love it. So yeah, hit me up, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Ask me those weather questions. We know we love them.
Well, there you go. Tiffany, thank you so much again for
Thank
doing
you,
this.
Mike.
And for those of you watching, again, of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel and click on that notification bell. We'll see you in the next one.